When I confronted my mom about letting Harvey be alone with Sienna after surgery, she smiled and said, "He just wants to help." I just stared at her. That was 8 months ago. Yesterday, she sat in court crying as the judge took away her custody rights. When my little sister Sienna was 7, she turned into Marge Simpson, because that's when she turned extremely yellow from severe liver disease. The doctor said that if she didn't get a transplant in 2 months, she would be 6 feet under. I got tested, and I wasn't a match. So when they asked if I wanted to put her on the waiting list for a donation, I obviously said no, because I was a nurse. And I knew that if you weren't a rich white man with Prada sunglasses, then putting your name on the list would only lead to disappointment. So as soon as we got home, I called everyone in our family. My mom flat out refused, because bikini season was coming up, so she didn't want a surgery scar. My dad said he didn't like hospitals. My brother Mike claimed he couldn't take time off work. We all knew he was unemployed. My sil said her yoga retreat was non-refundable. That night, as I tucked Sienna into bed, I lied and told her everything would be okay. But 6 hours later, my wish came true, because that's when my cousin Jessie called. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since she started a OnlyFans after her divorce. I myself didn't gaff, but my family treated her like she had a disease. But now here she was, ready to save my sister's life. "I heard about Sienna," Jessie said. "I want to get tested." Long story short, she was able to donate, and we all lived happily ever after. Low-like, because as soon as I put the good news into the family group chat, my mom called. "What the actual F is wrong with you?" she screamed over FaceTime. "You're gonna turn my daughter into a hoe, you effing idiot." I pinched the bridge of my nose before hanging up. Over text, she threatened me dozens of times before promising that she would find another way. "Okay, Mom, I trust you." I lied, and as soon as our texting battle was over, I booked a date for the transplant behind her back. I knew Sienna would need a lot of post-surgery support, so I started working 20-hour shifts to make sure I had enough money to take time off. It was during this time that I let my mom babysit her, because I knew that no matter what, she would never hurt her. But then came March 24th. I walked into my mom's house to collect Sienna and found her sleeping on the couch. This was weird because even with the disease, Sienna never took naps. "Is she getting worse?" I shouted. My mom just plastered a huge smile on her face. "Nope," she exclaimed. Before I could say anything else, her hand reached towards Sienna's shorts and pulled them down. My eyes widened. Because right there, sitting just above her kitty cat, was a long scar. "Isn't it great?" Uncle Harvey came through and donated. Vial rose in my throat. That's when Uncle Harvey appeared from around the corner. "Hey, darling." I felt his hand lingering on the small of my back, and his face had the same predatory smile I recognized from my childhood. "Well, don't be rude, honey. He just saved your sister's life. Give him a kiss." "Mom, I thought you said he moved to Canada?" I asked, voice shaking. "He did. But then he came back just for Sienna." Every instinct screamed at me to run. Uncle Harvey's greedy eyes ran across my now adult body. As he pulled me in for a hug, he whispered, "Now your sister can have a piece of me forever, just like you used to." That time I couldn't stop myself from shoving him away. "You ungrateful little bitch," my mom said. "Have some effing respect. You better not still be hung up on those sick fantasies you used to come up with." "Yeah, my love." Uncle Harvey chimed in. "I thought we had moved past that." I grabbed Sienna off the couch and bolted for the door. Her body was limp against mine. Behind me, my mother was screaming threats while Harvey just watched with that sick smile. As soon as I carried her into bed, I called my work to take the entire week off. And that night, Sienna woke up screaming. Uncle Harvey was there when I woke up, she sobbed. In the hospital, he said I was his special girl now. He took pictures of my tummy. I held her while she cried, my heart shattering. She'd been conscious during recovery. She remembered everything. I had no effing idea what to do. Luckily, my mom decided for me. Because the next morning, I got a call. It was the hospital. My mom had filed papers naming Harvey as Sienna's medical guardian due to the transplant. The hospital explained that as a living donor, Harvey had the right to monitor his donation and attend all medical appointments. I instantly knew what was going on. Uncle Harvey was doing the exact same thing he did to cover up my false allegations. He was using his ultra wealth to pull strings, but I wasn't a little girl anymore. So this time, I was ready to pull back. Hung up the phone with trembling hands. The hospital's words echoed in my mind. Medical guardian, donor rights, mandatory appointments. My fingers flew across my phone screen, searching for family lawyers in the area. 3 calls later, I had my answer. Harvey had no actual donor rights. But Mom's emergency custody petition as primary caregiver during surgery could succeed. The lawyer's warning made my stomach drop. Harvey was using Mom's legal standing as cover. My phone buzzed. Mom's text demanded I return Sienna immediately for Harvey's post-op evaluation, or she'd call police for kidnapping. I stared at the message, my hands shaking harder. Sienna sat at the kitchen table, coloring quietly, occasionally touching her stomach where the scar was. The doorbell rang. Sarah stood on my porch, her nursing scrubs still on from her shift. She'd been my best friend since high school, the one person who never judged me during the mess with Uncle Harvey years ago. Relief flooded through me as she stepped inside. We sat at the kitchen table while Sienna colored. I explained everything. The secret surgery. Harvey's reappearance. Mom's threats. Sarah listened, her face growing more concerned. Then she shifted uncomfortably. "I need to tell you something," Sarah said. She explained she needed Mom's recommendation letter for nursing school next month. My mother sat on the hospital's education committee. Without that letter, Sarah's application would be dead in the water. I watched Sarah unconsciously protect her own liver surgery scar from a childhood accident. The gesture was automatic. Protective. She'd understand what Sienna was going through, but I saw the conflict in her eyes. Support me and lose her career dreams or stay neutral. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Mom had taken to Facebook. Post after post appeared on my feed. Prayers needed. Daughter having mental breakdown. My brother Harvey tried to help save Sienna and this is the thanks he gets. Some people create drama even in times of blessing. The comments poured in. Extended family members expressed shock at my ungrateful behavior. Church friends offered prayers for my troubled mind. Neighbors promised to pray for our family's healing. Each comment felt like another nail in my coffin. Sienna looked up from her coloring. "My tummy medicine tastes yucky," she said. I checked the bottle. Nearly empty. The anti-rejection medication was critical. Without it, her body could reject the transplanted liver tissue. I called the pharmacy. They needed guardian approval for the refill. The insurance company had Mom listed as primary guardian from the surgery paperwork. My name wasn't enough anymore. Panic rose in my throat. Sienna needed those medications today. Sarah drove us to the pharmacy. I'd convinced them to fill an emergency supply while we sorted out the paperwork. Sienna held my hand as we walked through the parking lot. That's when I spotted it. Harvey's silver Mercedes in the far corner. My body went cold. He was here, following us. My mind raced back to Sienna's iPad on the kitchen counter. Find my iPhone. He'd been tracking us through her device. We entered the pharmacy. I kept Sienna close, scanning the aisles. The pharmacist called our name. As we approached the counter, Harvey appeared from the vitamin aisle. His predatory smile made my skin crawl. "Well, hello there, my special girl," Harvey said, placing his hand on Sienna's shoulder. She immediately shrank away, pressing against my leg. He turned to the pharmacist. "I'm actually her medical guardian. I should be handling her medications." The pharmacist looked confused, glancing between us. Harvey pulled out paperwork. Mom's emergency custody filing with his name listed as medical advisor. His hand moved to touch Sienna's stomach, right where her scar was. "My tummy hurts where you touched it," Sienna said loudly. Her voice carried across the pharmacy. Other customers turned to look. An elderly woman frowned at Harvey. A mother pulled her own daughter closer. Harvey's smile faltered. The pharmacist's expression shifted, recognition of something wrong. She'd seen this before. Predators using medical access. Her eyes met mine with understanding. "I'll need to verify this paperwork," the pharmacist said slowly. "It'll take a few minutes." She glanced meaningfully at the security camera above us. The footage would show Harvey's inappropriate touching. Sienna's fearful reaction. Evidence. But accessing it would require a legal request. Harvey's face darkened. He stepped back. Hands raised in mock innocence. "Just trying to help my niece," he said loudly. "Some people make everything seem sinister." We left with the emergency medication supply. In the car, Sarah stayed quiet. Her face was pale. She'd seen Harvey's behavior, Sienna's fear, but I could see her wrestling with the implications for her own future. By evening, the local Facebook community group had posted about my pharmacy meltdown. Someone had filmed part of the encounter. The video was edited, showing only me pulling Sienna away from Harvey, not his inappropriate touching. The caption read, "Local woman coaches child to lie about hero uncle who saved her life." Comments flooded in. "I know that family. The uncle donated part of his liver. Some people are so ungrateful. That poor man just trying to help. She's obviously coaching that child." My phone rang. The school principal. Mom had contacted them about Sienna's absence. The return to school meeting would require Mom's presence as temporary guardian during recovery, which meant Harvey would accompany as her medical advisor. I paced my living room. Sienna asleep on the couch. Sarah sat in the armchair, still conflicted. My phone rang again. "Mom, you always do this." Mom's voice was cold. Just like with your father. You made those same wild accusations and drove him away. He left us because of your lies. The words hit like a physical blow. Dad hadn't died. He'd left after I'd tried to tell him about Harvey. Mom had convinced him I was lying, seeking attention. He'd chosen to believe her and walked away from our family entirely. My phone exploded with notifications. The family group chat was active. Screenshots of my texts from the past week, taken out of context. Messages where I'd expressed frustration about Mom. Worried texts about Sienna's health, all framed to make me look unstable. She's clearly having a breakdown. Remember when she lied about Harvey before? That poor child needs stability. Maybe Mom should have custody. I tried to document everything. Screenshots of Harvey's texts, photos of his car following us, Ring doorbell footage of him driving by my house. Sarah looked at the evidence pile growing on my kitchen table. This looks, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Obsessive. Like you're stalking him, not the other way around. Her words stung because I knew how it looked. A desperate woman trying to frame an innocent man. The same narrative from my childhood, playing out again. Mom had given Harvey access to Sienna's MyChart medical portal. Appointment notifications popped up on my phone. The way Sarah's internal conflict plays out here is telling. She literally touches her own surgery scar while watching this unfold, showing how personal this is for her even as she has to weigh her future career. He'd scheduled evaluations, adding notes about concerning home environment and medication compliance issues. 3 days without proper sleep. The stress was breaking me. I drove through a red light with Sienna in the car, my exhausted brain not processing the signal. The traffic camera flashed. Another piece of evidence against me. Endangering a child. Mike called that evening. My brother's voice was strained. I believe you, he said quietly. About Harvey, I remember things from when we were kids, but my wife. She says if I get involved, she'll leave. Take the kids. I can't lose my family over this. The betrayal cut deep, another family member choosing comfort over truth. I understood his position, but it didn't make it hurt less. Sienna needed protection, and one by one, everyone was stepping back. The grocery store trip was torture. 3 neighbors avoided eye contact. One whispered to her companion as we passed, "That's the one accusing the hero uncle. Can you imagine? He saved that little girl's life." I abandoned my half-filled cart and left. In the parking lot, I checked my phone. Someone had posted my photo on the local Crime Watch page. Warning: this woman has been making false accusations against a family member. Approach with caution. Mom called again that evening. She confirmed Harvey's alibi for the pharmacy encounter. He'd been visiting her. The timing happened to match traffic patterns perfectly. They'd coordinated their story. Sarah came by that night. Her face was drawn with exhaustion and conflict. "I'm sorry," she said, "but I need that recommendation letter by Friday. I've worked too hard for this. I can't throw away my career." Another ally lost. I understood but felt the walls closing in. Harvey was systematically isolating me, using Mom's influence and connections to cut off my support network. The next revelation came from Sienna's school records. To prove Harvey lied about the donation date, I'd need to show my work schedule. But that would reveal I'd been working during Sienna's surgery, making me look like a neglectful guardian who prioritized work over her care. Every move I made to expose him became evidence against me. The system was rigged in his favor. Money, connections, and Mom's support gave him every advantage. I'd smiled briefly at the pharmacy when we got Sienna's medications. Relief that she'd have what she needed. Someone photographed that moment. Online, it became, "Woman celebrates while sick child suffers." What kind of person smiles during a medical crisis? My phone buzzed. A text from Harvey. "We both know how this ends. But I'll give you one chance to do this quietly." The threat was clear. Submit to his access to Sienna or face complete destruction. My hands shook as I deleted the message. No evidence. He'd learned from before to leave no trail. Sienna woke up crying again that night. The same nightmare. Uncle Harvey in the hospital room, taking pictures, calling her special. I held her while she sobbed, feeling the weight of my failure to protect her. Morning brought new challenges. Harvey had started dating Lisa, my coworker at the hospital. She brought him coffee during my shift, his flowers on display at the nurse's station. During lunch, I heard him quoting Sienna's favorite movie to Lisa, demonstrating his close relationship with his niece. The manipulation was masterful. Every public interaction portrayed him as the devoted uncle, me as the bitter sister trying to keep them apart. Even my colleagues began looking at me differently. Sienna's teacher called about concerning behavior. In class, Sienna had drawn pictures of a man with a camera. When asked, she'd said both, "Uncle Harvey takes pictures, and Mommy says Uncle Harvey is bad." The teacher noted possible coaching and parental alienation. Harvey and I gave opposing versions of events to everyone who would listen. He spoke of his sacrifice, the joy of saving Sienna's life, his desire to ensure her continued health. I spoke of boundaries, protection, past patterns. We both believed our version completely. The final blow came from Mom's phone. She'd found old texts from my college years, before I'd processed what Harvey had done. Messages thanking him for being a helpful uncle during tough times. Evidence that contradicted my current claims. The past week had destroyed my credibility, my support system, and my stability. Harvey's calculated campaign was working. Soon, he'd have unfettered access to Sienna, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. But I wouldn't give up. Not this time. Sienna needed me to be stronger than I'd been as a child. Whatever it took, I'd protect her from becoming his next victim, even if it cost me everything. The counselor's office smelled like vanilla candles and false promises. Sienna sat between us during the mandated session, her small hands folded in her lap. The counselor asked gentle questions about her feelings, her recovery, her family relationships. I watched Harvey's practiced concern, the way he leaned forward with fake empathy. When Sienna mentioned feeling scared, he reached for her hand. She pulled away instinctively. The counselor made notes. Later, I'd learned she'd written, possible parental alienation, and child caught between feuding adults. Harvey's performance was flawless. The concerned uncle worried about his niece's emotional well-being after major surgery. My attempts to redirect the conversation to boundaries and safety came across as controlling, defensive. Ring doorbell footage became my obsession. Every time Harvey's Mercedes passed my house, I saved the video. 3 times in one day, 5 times the next. Sarah stopped by to drop off groceries I'd asked for, took one look at my laptop screen filled with timestamps and video clips, and her face fell. She gently suggested I was documenting my own paranoia, rather than his stalking. Mom's petition for temporary custody had been filed a week before I even knew about it. The emergency hearing was scheduled based on claims of medical neglect. I'd been working during Sienna's surgery. I'd initially refused the transplant waiting list. I'd kept her from follow-up appointments with her medical advisor. The papers made me sound negligent at best, dangerous at worst. Harvey's dating profile on multiple apps showed he'd been active since before the donation. His bio read, single uncle and father figured a special needs niece. Love kids and family values. The calculated nature of it made my skin crawl. He was building a public persona of the devoted family man while systematically destroying my credibility. During Sienna's therapy session, I sat in the waiting room and used her iPad password to access her photos before Harvey could delete anything. My heart raced as I scrolled through recent images. The search history autocomplete showed, "Why does Uncle Harvey want to see my scar?" Typed but never searched. Evidence of her discomfort, but also evidence I'd violated her privacy by going through her device. The court-ordered therapist specialized in high-conflict custody disputes. She asked about my history of accusations, specifically referencing Mom's testimony about my father. The story Mom had told was elaborate. How I'd driven Dad away with false allegations about other family members. How he'd left to escape my toxic behavior. The truth was simpler and sadder. He'd chosen Mom's version of reality over mine. School pickup became a battlefield. The deadline to get Sienna forced me to leave court-ordered therapy early, which was noted as non-compliance. When I arrived, Harvey was already there with Mom, chatting with Sienna's teacher about her progress. They'd timed it perfectly. I looked like the unstable parent rushing in late while they appeared calm and collected. Harvey's attempt to record me at drop-off was obvious. He held his phone at an angle, waiting for me to react. When I noticed and turned away, he spoke loudly about just trying to check on his niece. His new girlfriend Lisa stood nearby, witnessing what looked like my paranoid behavior. The trap was elegant. React and look unstable. Don't react and let him control the narrative. That evening, I discovered Harvey had moved into my childhood bedroom at Mom's house. Sienna's overnight bag was in there, her favorite stuffed animal on the bed. My old diary sat visible on the nightstand, the one where teenage me had written confused entries about feeling uncomfortable around certain family members but not understanding why. Mom had kept it all these years, and now Harvey had access to my adolescent attempts to process trauma. The supervised visitation offer came through Harvey's lawyer. Public places only. Neutral observers present, but only if I admitted in writing that I'd misunderstood his intentions and would work on my trust issues. The document was carefully worded to sound reasonable while essentially requiring me to admit to false accusations. Mom's Facebook campaign intensified. Prayers needed. My daughter is denying a sick child access to the uncle who saved her life. The comments section became a chorus of judgment. People who'd never met us offered opinions about ungrateful children, mental health concerns, and the nobility of organ donors. Each share spread the narrative wider. I realized Harvey's donation date was actually March 20th, not the 24th when I'd found Sienna. The hospital record showed a different surgical suite than what Mom had told me. I'd been wrong about the specific date but right about the secret surgery. This discrepancy would make me look careless with facts in court, undermining my credibility further. Accessing Sienna's late father's phone revealed a treasure trove of concerns. He'd died 2 years ago from cancer, but his note showed he'd been documenting Harvey's behavior. Photos of Harvey lingering too long during family hugs. Messages expressing discomfort about Harvey's interest in Sienna. But the same file showed he'd loaned Harvey money, muddying the narrative. It wasn't a clear-cut case of concern. It was complicated. Messy. Like real life. Mom faced an impossible choice at the custody hearing. Supporting me meant risking grandparent rights. Supporting Harvey meant keeping access to Sienna. I watched her struggle with the decision. Saw the moment she chose Harvey's version to protect her relationship with her granddaughter. The betrayal was complete, but I understood it. She was choosing Sienna too, just differently than I was. My transformation began with small compromises. I started using Harvey's own tactics. Manipulation disguised as concern. I accidentally ran into Lisa at yoga class, striking up conversation about Sienna's recovery. While she talked about Harvey's dedication, I memorized his schedule, learned his routines, gathered intelligence I'd need later. The family iCloud account became my secret weapon. Harvey didn't realize his photos still synced to the shared storage. Images of unconscious Sienna during surgery, taken from angles that made my stomach turn. But obtaining them this way meant they might not be admissible in court. Evidence gathered through questionable means was still evidence, but it came with ethical costs. Sienna's paternal grandparents emerged from their grief-imposed isolation. They'd been estranged since their son's death, but now demanded visitation rights. Fighting them meant splitting my attention, missing important medical appointments. Sienna's liver panel went undone while I sat in another lawyer's office, and Harvey's team marked it as medical neglect in the court record. My credit cards maxed out from legal fees, while Harvey enjoyed Mom's financial support. She'd given him money as thanks for saving Sienna. He was using it to destroy me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Wow. It just showed how deeply he's invaded every part of their life, even reaching back into their childhood trauma. I find it interesting how the father's death 2 years ago left behind evidence on his phone, but it's mixed with normal family stuff like money loans, which makes everything harder to prove. Every dollar spent on lawyers was a dollar not spent on Sienna's future needs. The ice cream shop incident happened on a Saturday. Sienna wanted her favorite mint chocolate chip, but Harvey was there with Lisa. The confrontation was inevitable. Voices raised. Other families stared. Teenage employees looked terrified. Someone filmed it, and by evening it was on 3 different social media platforms. Crazy woman harasses hero uncle at ice cream shop. My hospital administrator called me in. Personal issues were affecting patient care, she said. Harvey's girlfriend Lisa sat on the review committee. She'd been professional but concerned about my stability. Administrative leave was suggested, then mandated. My income stopped while my legal bills continued mounting. Sleeping in my car outside Mom's house became routine. I watched for signs of Sienna, made sure Harvey wasn't taking her anywhere alone. But to anyone passing by, I looked like a stalker. The security guard at the nearby shop eventually asked me to move along. Even my vigilance was turned against me. At Sienna's father's grave, I met Dad unexpectedly. He stood there with flowers, tears in his eyes. His words cut deep, begging me to stop torturing Mom, reminding me she'd already lost her marriage to these accusations. The pain in his voice was real, but so was my need to protect Sienna. We stood on opposite sides of a grave, unable to bridge the gap between us. My investigation techniques grew desperate. A photo I'd taken of Harvey at the school was misidentified by someone online as a male teacher. The innocent man was suspended pending investigation, his reputation destroyed by my mistake. His wife demanded a public apology and threatened a defamation suit. I had to continue knowing I was causing collateral damage. Jessie called late one night, her voice gentle but probing. She asked the question I couldn't answer immediately. What if I was wrong about everything except Harvey being creepy? What if he was inappropriate but not dangerous? The silence stretched between us as I grappled with doubt. But then I remembered Sienna's tears. Her fear and my resolve hardened again. The public admission came during a custody evaluation. To maintain any credibility about Harvey, I had to address Mom's claims about Dad. Yes, I'd made accusations in high school. Yes, they'd been investigated and dismissed. Yes, Dad had left afterward. But admitting to false accusations in the past while claiming current ones were true created a narrative nightmare. Sienna's iPad photos revealed another painful truth. She'd tried to tell me about Harvey making her uncomfortable during my overtime shifts. "You were always at work." She'd typed in a message never sent. The evidence I needed came with proof of my own failures as a guardian. Harvey's lawyer would use it to show I'd prioritized work over Sienna's safety. Harvey's emergency motion advanced our custody hearing by 2 months. My lawyer was on maternity leave, her replacement unfamiliar with the case's complexities. I sat in strategy meetings explaining years of history to someone who saw just another bitter custody dispute. The system's wheels turned faster than I could keep up with. Lisa revealed more than she intended during a coffee shop encounter I'd orchestrated. Harvey's obsession with our family went back years. He believed he deserved to be Sienna's father after watching from the sidelines. In his mind, saving her life made her spiritually his daughter. The delusion mixed with predatory desires created a dangerous cocktail of entitlement and obsession. Breaking promises became necessary. Sienna's father had made me swear never to involve his parents. They'd been difficult, judgmental, controlling, but their testimony about Harvey's past behavior could be crucial. At his deathbed, I'd promised to keep them away. Now I sat in their pristine living room, betraying a dead man's wishes to protect his daughter. The ethical person I'd been was dying. Each compromise, each manipulation, each strategic lie called another piece of her. The woman emerging was harder, focused, willing to play dirty. I practiced crying on command for court appearances, learned to phrase things just right to seem reasonable while painting Harvey as dangerous. I hated who I was becoming but couldn't stop. During a fake reconciliation attempt, I hugged Harvey in front of witnesses. While embracing him, I accessed his phone using the pattern I'd memorized from watching him. The evidence I found, photos, messages, search histories, was obtained illegally but revealed the depth of his obsession. Every ethical line crossed was justified by what I discovered. Small victories felt hollow. The restraining order I'd fought for was granted. But that same day, I found Harvey at the cemetery where Sienna's father was buried. We both brought flowers for the death anniversary. Both claimed the right to mourn. The legal document in my hand meant nothing in that moment of shared grief and mutual hatred. Harvey's counterclaim for full custody gained traction. The guardian ad litem assigned to represent Sienna's interests was thorough, professional, and increasingly convinced that I was the unstable element in Sienna's life. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered looked like obsession. Every protective action seemed controlling. The narrative was shifting against me. My past kindness haunted me. Harvey's elderly mother needed dialysis rides, and I'd been the one driving her for years before this started. Now she called crying, saying I was like a daughter until I turned on Harvey. The emotional manipulation was effective because the relationship had been real. Every connection I'd built was being weaponized against me. Hospital colleagues chose sides based on shift patterns. Day shift had seen Harvey's charming visits with Lisa. Night shift had seen me crying in the break room. The division created a hostile work environment even while I was on leave. Only Maria from church offered genuine support, quietly volunteering to babysit during court dates. Her faith demanded protecting the innocent, she said, regardless of public opinion. Family court required clear and convincing evidence for emergency custody changes. Suspicions, concerns, and fears weren't enough. I needed proof that met legal standards, not just maternal instincts. The bar was higher than I'd realized, and my scrambling to meet it looked increasingly desperate. An old college friend worked in cybersecurity. I called in a favor from our shared past. She'd helped me through my darkest time in school when I was processing childhood trauma. Now I needed her skills to recover deleted photos from Harvey's devices. She retrieved them but warned me that testifying about the method would implicate her in federal crimes. The evidence existed but came with a cost too high to pay. Sienna's father's journal revealed the full tragedy. He'd known Harvey was escalating but chose silence to keep his final months peaceful. The evidence file he'd been building was hidden in a safety deposit box Mom didn't know existed. Reading his words broke my heart. He'd chosen a peaceful death over protecting Sienna through an ugly court battle. I had to forgive his choice while finishing what he'd started. Harvey's overconfidence became his weakness. In a sworn affidavit, he claimed he'd never been alone with Sienna before the surgery, but the photos from her father's collection proved otherwise. Multiple occasions where Harvey had volunteered to babysit, always with a camera. The lie was documented, official, and impossible to retract. During the deposition, I presented the contradiction without gloating. My voice stayed steady, professional, matter-of-fact. Harvey's lawyer realized they'd been lied to. The flash of recognition and anger was subtle but visible. The legal momentum shifted slightly. Patterns of deception becoming part of the official record. Both sides prepared for the final custody hearing with Sienna's forensic interview as the key evidence. Everything hinged on what she would say to the trained interviewer. Her words would carry more weight than all our adult accusations and denials. The thought of her small voice deciding everything was both hopeful and terrifying. Harvey's carefully constructed image was cracking. Lisa found something in his apartment that disturbed her enough to reach out. She wouldn't say what exactly, just that there were so many photos, and she'd thought they were innocent until she saw the volume. Her cooperation was tentative, fragile, but it was something. The final weeks became a blur of preparation. Mock testimony sessions where I learned to control my emotions. Document organization that filled entire boxes. Character witnesses vetted and prepared. The woman I'd become was strategic, calculating, focused. Nothing like the trusting person who'd let mom babysit during overtime shifts. Everything I'd built over months of investigation would culminate in one hearing. Sienna's testimony, the evidence collection, the pattern of lies, it would all be presented to a judge who would decide our futures. The weight of it was crushing, but I couldn't falter now. Too much had been sacrificed to give up. The night before the hearing, I sat in Sienna's room watching her sleep. Her peaceful face showed no signs of the trauma she'd endured. Tomorrow, she'd have to relive it all for strangers in a sterile room. The guilt of putting her through that ward with the necessity of protecting her future. Harvey had turned me into someone I didn't recognize. Manipulative, strategic, willing to destroy others for my goal. But maybe that transformation was necessary. Maybe the only way to fight a predator was to become something equally ruthless. The ethical cost was enormous, but Sienna's safety was worth any price. I thought about everyone I'd lost in this fight. Sarah, Mike, Dad, Mom, colleagues, neighbors. My world had shrunk to just Sienna and me against Harvey's manufactured reality, but as I watched her breathe, I knew I'd make the same choices again. Some battles were worth becoming someone you hated. The morning would bring the final confrontation. Years of pain, months of investigation, weeks of preparation, all leading to one day in court. I closed my eyes and tried to find sleep, knowing that tomorrow would either vindicate everything I'd sacrificed or destroy what little I had left. The morning of the custody hearing arrived with a cold drizzle that matched my mood. I dressed Sienna in her favorite purple dress, the one her father had bought before he died. She clutched her stuffed rabbit while I braided her hair, neither of us speaking about what lay ahead. The courthouse parking lot was already filling when we arrived. Through the rain-streaked windshield, I spotted Harvey's Mercedes in the reserved section. My stomach churned as I helped Sienna out of the car, shielding her with my umbrella. Inside, the hallway buzzed with other families waiting for their cases. I recognized several faces from Mom's church, their eyes sliding away when they saw me. The teacher whose husband I'd accidentally gotten suspended sat across from us, her glare burning into my skin. My replacement lawyer rushed in late, coffee staining his shirt. He'd reviewed the case files but kept mixing up dates and names. I corrected him quietly while Sienna colored in her activity book, trying not to let my panic show. The courtroom doors opened. Harvey was already inside with Mom and his legal team. Lisa sat behind them, her face pale and drawn. She caught my eye briefly before looking away. Whatever she'd found in Harvey's apartment had shaken her, but would she actually testify? The judge entered. A stern woman with silver hair pulled back severely. I noticed how the author shows the narrator's transformation through that powerful line about becoming someone she hates to protect Sienna. The way she sits watching her daughter sleep before the big court day really captures that mix of guilt and determination. It's interesting that Lisa found something disturbing in Harvey's apartment. The author builds tension by not revealing what exactly, just mentioning so many photos, which lets our minds fill in the blanks. She'd presided over hundreds of custody battles, seen every manipulation tactic. I prayed she'd see through Harvey's performance. Sienna's forensic interview played first on the courtroom monitors. Her small voice filled the room as she described waking up in the hospital with Harvey taking pictures of her stomach. She talked about feeling scared when he touched her scar, about the nightmares that followed. The interviewer's gentle questions drew out details that made several people in the gallery shift uncomfortably. Harvey's lawyer tried to suggest coaching, but the forensic interviewer testified about Sienna's consistency, her age-appropriate language, the physical reactions that couldn't be faked. The judge took extensive notes. When they called me to testify, my legs shook. I walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. My lawyer's questions were basic, establishing timeline, my relationship with Sienna, my concerns about Harvey. I kept my answers factual, resisting the urge to elaborate emotionally. Harvey's lawyer cross-examined aggressively. She brought up my work schedule during Sienna's surgery, the delayed medical appointments, my obsessive documentation. Each question was designed to paint me as an unstable, neglectful guardian. I answered calmly, having practiced these responses dozens of times. The evidence from Sienna's father's safety deposit box was presented next. His journal entries documenting Harvey's concerning behavior, the photos showing inappropriate proximity during family gatherings, his growing fears about Harvey's interest in Sienna. Harvey's lawyer objected repeatedly, but the judge allowed it. Then came the critical moment. Harvey's sworn affidavit claiming he'd never been alone with Sienna before the surgery was projected on the screen. My lawyer presented the contradicting photos from her father's collection, Harvey babysitting Sienna multiple times, always with his camera. The judge's expression hardened as she reviewed the evidence of perjury. Harvey took the stand next. His performance was polished, the devoted uncle who'd saved Sienna's life, just wanting to ensure her continued health. He spoke eloquently about the bond between donor and recipient, his concern for Sienna's well-being, his hurt at being falsely accused. But under cross-examination, cracks appeared. He couldn't explain the photos during supposed babysitting sessions he'd denied. His story about the donation date shifted slightly. When asked about his relationship with me during my childhood, he grew defensive, evasive. The judge noticed every inconsistency. Mom testified after lunch. She wore her best church dress, clutching a handkerchief. Her testimony painted me as a troubled daughter who'd driven away my father with false accusations, now repeating the pattern. But when my lawyer asked about her emergency custody petition filed before telling me about the surgery, she faltered. The timeline didn't match her narrative of a concerned grandmother. Lisa's testimony changed everything. She approached the stand reluctantly, avoiding Harvey's stare. Under oath, she described finding a hidden folder on Harvey's laptop containing hundreds of photos of young girls from our family, including many of Sienna. The photos weren't explicitly illegal, but the volume and focus were disturbing. She'd found similar collections dating back years, all carefully organized and labeled. Harvey's lawyer tried to discredit Lisa as a scorned girlfriend, but Lisa had brought receipts, screenshots she'd taken before confronting Harvey. The judge ordered a recess to review the new evidence. During the break, I took Sienna to the courthouse cafeteria. She picked at a muffin while I tried to keep my hands from shaking. Maria from church appeared with her husband, offering quiet support. She'd been watching the proceedings, she said, and wanted me to know that some people saw the truth. When court resumed, the judge heard from the guardian, ad litem. Her report was thorough but conflicted. She acknowledged Sienna's clear discomfort with Harvey, the concerning evidence that had emerged, but also noted my erratic behavior and the family disruption. She recommended supervised visitation for all parties while continuing investigation. Character witnesses testified briefly. Sienna's teacher described behavioral changes after the surgery, Harvey's inappropriate interest in Sienna's medical details. The pharmacist who'd witnessed Harvey touching Sienna's stomach confirmed the incident, noting Sienna's fearful reaction. Each testimony added another piece to the pattern. Harvey's elderly mother took the stand, her voice shaking. She defended her son, but under gentle questioning, admitted she'd never left him alone with her own grandchildren. When asked why, she couldn't provide a clear answer, just repeated that it wasn't proper. The admission hung heavy in the courtroom. The final witness was unexpected. Dad entered the courtroom, his face haggard. He'd driven through the night after wrestling with his conscience. On the stand, he confirmed that I'd made accusations about Harvey in high school, but revealed something Mom had hidden. There had been a police report, an investigation. It was closed due to insufficient evidence, not because I'd lied. He'd left the family not because of my lies, but because he couldn't handle the possibility they were true. Harvey's composure finally cracked. He stood up, shouting about conspiracies against him, about ungrateful family members, about his rights as Sienna's savior. His lawyer tried to calm him, but he continued ranting about how Sienna owed him her life, how she belonged with him. The judge ordered him restrained. Closing arguments were brief. My lawyer focused on the pattern of deception, the evidence of grooming behavior, Sienna's clear statements. Harvey's lawyer argued about my instability, the lack of criminal charges, the noble act of organ donation being twisted into something sinister. The judge retired to chambers. Those 20 minutes felt like hours. Sienna had fallen asleep against my shoulder, exhausted from the emotional day. I stroked her hair, whispering promises I hoped I could keep. When the judge returned, the courtroom fell silent. She spoke carefully, acknowledging the complexity of the case. She found Harvey's perjury troubling, the evidence of inappropriate interest in Sienna concerning. While criminal charges would be a matter for prosecutors, the family court's priority was Sienna's safety and well-being. Custody was awarded to me with specific conditions. Harvey was prohibited from unsupervised contact with Sienna until she turned 18. Any medical information would go through court-appointed intermediaries. Mom could have supervised visitation, but only at a court-approved facility. The judge ordered therapy for Sienna and recommended it for all parties. Harvey's reaction was immediate and violent. He lunged toward our table, screaming that Sienna was his, that he'd saved her life, that we'd stolen her from him. Court officers restrained him, dragging him out as he continued shouting. Mom sobbed in her seat, torn between her brother and her granddaughter. Outside the courthouse, the rain had stopped. I carried Sienna to the car, her small body heavy with exhausted sleep. Lisa approached hesitantly, apologizing for not seeing the truth sooner. I thanked her for her courage in testifying. The parking lot was dividing into camps. Mom's church friends surrounded her, offering comfort. Dad stood alone by his truck, looking lost. Mike sat in his car with his wife, who'd come to support Harvey, but now looked shaken by what she'd heard. The family was fractured, possibly permanently. That evening, I gave Sienna her anti-rejection medication in our quiet kitchen. She asked if Uncle Harvey would come to the house anymore. I explained that he wouldn't, that the judge had made rules to keep her safe. She nodded solemnly, then asked if we could have ice cream. The simple request after such a heavy day made me cry. Harvey was arrested 2 days later. The digital forensics team had found more than just photos on his devices. He'd been part of online communities that shared strategies for accessing children, though no evidence suggested he'd acted on the worst impulses yet. The criminal charges would proceed separately from our custody case. Mom showed up at my door a week later, looking older than I'd ever seen her. She stood on my porch, struggling with words. Finally, she asked if she could see Sienna at the supervised facility. I agreed, knowing Sienna needed whatever family connections could be salvaged. The supervised visits were awkward at first. Mom brought coloring books and tried too hard to be cheerful. But gradually, she began to really see Sienna's fear, to understand what she'd enabled. During one visit, she broke down crying, apologizing to Sienna for not protecting her. It was a start. Mike reached out through text, testing the waters. His wife had been horrified by Harvey's courtroom breakdown, finally understanding why I'd fought so hard. They wanted to rebuild the relationship, but slowly, carefully. Trust would take time to restore. Work was complicated. The hospital lifted my administrative leave, but the damage to my reputation,